Morning everyone, this is Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH1002, and this is the introduction overview of the topics that we're going to cover in the 14th lecture, which is about the idea of media technology convergence. So last week what we talked about was the idea of affordances and constraints, and we looked at the wristwatch and time-based technology in order to get an idea of what timekeeping enables us to do. So that kind of sense of mediation of physical experience becomes something which is structured through the way that we organise things. So the clock dial, the digits on the clock, the scheduler, the diary, those kind of things, they kind of give us a way of imposing a kind of order and a structure onto our otherwise organic social experience, which is kind of different from a kind of more maybe mythical but natural social experience. So what I want to look at this week is the kind of further taking forward this idea of media as a set of tools. The question then is, if these are tools that we can use to manipulate the world and to understand the world in different ways, what are the kind of skills and capabilities and knowledge, what's called literacies, what are the things that we need to know how to do? What's the know-how and the know-why that we need to consider? So we'll look at this in terms of, again, we'll focus on the chapters from Jones and Hafner, which are relating to this in terms of digital tools and digital literacies, and the idea that media allows you to work across time and space. It allows you to use language in different ways, and it changes the relationship, the way that we have, if you like, contemporary forms of media between things like expert and amateur. We separate out, kind of professional from amateur forms of media, but are the new media forms and practices and systems, are they changing that relationship? Are we seeing a shift from predominantly a consumption-based approach to media to something which is much more focused on participation and the idea of kind of engagement and DIY production? And kind of at the same time, there's a kind of a pressure, if you like, on the authority of the media that we consume. So a book is seen as an authoritative, status-based icon of information, if you like. But with electronic publishing and Twitter and social media feeds and microblogging, what we're seeing is a kind of a breakdown of that status, because you can combine and mash up text. So films are no longer, the integrity of a continuous film is no longer protected because people can rework it and reversion it. So we're seeing what is ultimately, if you like, a kind of a shift from a set of hierarchies which have structured the way that we think about the world, knowledge, certain forms of knowledge being at the top and certain forms of practice being kind of measured as they go below that kind of hierarchical order, to something which is much more horizontal. And the way that we use our wiki, the DMU Commons wiki and other wikis, is a really good example of a kind of decentralization, a kind of diffusion of the status. So you don't have to be an expert. And this comes from a tradition of electronic media, which is the kind of hacking tradition. And what we often consider, and Jones and Hafner talk about this a lot, what we have to consider is that usually we hear the term hacking as a kind of criminal thing, but actually hacking is a creative practice. We can re-hack and reversion different types of media, different types of electronic devices. We change the context in how things are used and we repurpose it. So in that sense, what we're doing is we're kind of taking back some kind of control from the kind of the standard fixed models of the way that things are supposed to be consumed. So it's that idea that, I think the phrase that for myself personally, that is a kind of sums up a lot of these issues, is when people say, you should be more professional, you should be more, you should market yourself more, you should brand. And it's like, well, should is a really bad word to use, because it's imposing somebody's judgment on top of the creative, free-flowing interaction and thinking practices that we need, and the flow of ideas that we need to generate in order to be able to move forward. So this is kind of, on the one hand, we've got a kind of period where we're opening things up to ideas, and on the other side, actually our media is converging. So we're seeing an integration of platforms. So no longer do we look at television, radio, newspapers, film, cinema as separate entities, but they're kind of all combined with games, combined with data management processing, designed with network technologies, designed with maps, designed with all sorts of things which kind of converge around a kind of digital experience. And that's the territory that we want to be moving forward into, to be thinking about how we can use our media, these traditional legacy forms of media that we've looked at previously, and asking the question, how can we use these and integrate these in a more kind of thoughtful way than just kind of relying on the assumptions that were made in the past? You have to use these forms of media in this particular way. So we look at this idea in terms of the way that there's a good example of the way that people reclaim media from the past and they reversion it. And there's a lot of kind of retro collecting. So, you know, the whole vinyl phenomena and cassettes and things like that, it's kind of a way of differentiating yourself from the kind of the network culture, and kind of showing that you can appropriate the media, the legacy media of the past, and use that in a way which is more suited to your own individual experience, that can't be repurposed en masse by other people. Those things still exist, but our own individual experience is defined, if you like, by the things that we collect and the things that we use. Hence the the kind of collection of books and assorted toys and gadgets and things like that are kind of stuffed in this room. So one of the driving principles of kind of social media is the idea of remediation. The idea that what we do is it's this kind of postmodernist ideas that we can, things don't just exist in a little box of meaning by itself, but it relates to how other things are understood. And that what we can actually do is a kind of active creative process is we can rework it and reversion it, and it means different things in different contexts and circumstances. Hence the rise of the meme and kind of parody videos, crucial and important to social media, something that we kind of take for granted as a joke, but which is incredibly important as a new mode of communication, a new way of looking at creative practice and cultural expression. And what we end up with is we'll look at some of the ideas about kind of culture hacking. So it's not just about devices, but it's also about we looked at this a bit, I think, when we did the hipsters before Christmas, and the whole idea of kind of your identity becomes a form of entertainment and playfulness, and that you hack other periods and other cultures in order to be able to represent yourself, remediate yourself. Remember, our focus is shifting from the idea of thinking the medium is the message to the mediators are the message. The people who do the mediating, they're the message. We are the message in that sense. So there's a kind of return away from looking at texts and artifacts and laws and policies and institutions, which are kind of traditional media studies approaches, to thinking about practices and to think about creative engagement and to thinking about a kind of more socially defined form of engagement with media, because media has always been social, and maybe we just forget that sometimes in some academic circles. So, okay, the notes for this are available on the DMU Commons wiki. Just go to wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk, look for the TECH1002 pages, and there are tips for what you should be reading each week, and this video is listed on there as well. There's also a whole load of other media source material that you can use and look at, so via the box of broadcasts or via the BBC iPlayer or via YouTube. So just have a look at some of them, some radio programmes that are really interesting. And I'll see you at the lecture on Tuesday.